Recognizes Mr. Lynch for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go over the chronology here, Mr. Roth. Back in 2016, Russia and Vladimir Putin engaged in what bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee investigators called a, and I quote, aggressive, multifaceted effort to influence the outcome of that year's presidential election. The campaign included hacking of the systems of a major political party and leaking illegally obtained information, scanning U.S. election systems for vulnerabilities, and exploiting the weaknesses of social media platforms to spread disinformation to the American people. Again, in a 2017 declassified report, the U.S. intelligence community assessed that Russia's 2016 election operations signaled a, quote, new normal in Russian influence efforts, and that the Kremlin would, quote, apply lessons learned going forward against the U.S. and its allies. Mr. Roth, in a December interview with journalist Kara Swisher, you state that this declassified assessment was, quote, and I'm quoting you, a watershed moment in the history of content moderation and the Internet, close quote. You also stated in that interview that Twitter discussed potential threats to the integrity of the 2020 elections, and it was, quote, and I'm quoting you again, obvious to think about the most influential thing that impacted the 2016 election, which was the hack and leak campaign organized by the Russian government, and that, quote, we would have been stupid not to think about that risk. Mr. Roth, why would Twitter have been stupid to ignore that risk?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I think Twitter and the entire social media industry were, frankly, caught with their pants down in 2016 and missed an opportunity to do the critical work of protecting election security. This isn't my judgment. This is the judgment of academics and researchers who have spent years studying Russian active measures. And most of their conclusions suggest that the #1 most influential part of the Russian active measures campaign in 2016 was the hack and leak targeting John Podesta. It would have been foolish not to consider the possibility that they would run that play again.
Right. And so let me ask, was that top of mind for Twitter? You're trying to measure the credibility of incoming intelligence. Was that top of mind in regard to your decision, the company's decision to temporarily limit the distribution of the October 14th New York Post story that was delivered by Mayor Giuliani?
Yes, that was one of the animating concerns for us. For nearly 2 years, we had engaged in scenario planning exercises for potential risks tied to the elections, and one of them appeared to be happening that day. Now, again, I think the facts were complicated, and I do believe Twitter made a mistake then, but our judgment was colored by the experience of 2016 and by the very real Russian activities that we saw play out that year.
Mr. Roth, in a December 2020 sworn declaration to the FEC, you said that starting in 2018, you had, quote, regular meetings with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and industry peers regarding election security. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. You stated that during these meetings, quote, federal law enforcement agencies communicated that they expected hack and leak operations by state actors that might occur in the period shortly before the 2020 presidential election, likely in October, and that there were, quote, rumors that a hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden, close quote. Is that your recollection today?
It is, but I want to clarify that sentence slightly. I think it actually should have been 2 separate sentences. It is true that in meetings between industry and law enforcement discussed the possibility of a hack and leak campaign in the lead up to the election. And in one of those meetings, it was discussed, I believe by another company, that there was a possibility that that hack and leak could relate to Hunter Biden and Burisma. I don't believe that perspective was shared by law enforcement. They didn't endorse it. They didn't provide that information in that meeting.
Okay. Just to fast forward here, and in fact, in March 2021, 4 months after the election, the U.S. intelligence community assessed that Russian President Putin authorized a range of government organizations conducted influence operations aimed at denigrated President Biden's candidacy and the Democratic Party, supporting former President Trump and undermining public confidence in the electoral process and exacerbating socio-political divisions in the U.S. that obviously reared their head on January 6th. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes